Okay, I think we are live and we will get going here in just a minute. I'm going to give people a chance to get in and notify all of the Twitters. See you live now for anyone who wants to come. Let's see, WPF, material design. Okay, and I think we are good to go. Okay, see if I can get my environment going here real quick. Let's see. Tools, set profile 2, I believe. Profile 1. There we go. And normal takes me back. Yeah, tools, profile 1. Okay, so hopefully that is big enough. For those people who watched the stream last time, we were going through the new theming library, or the new theming API that's going to be coming in Material Design 2.6.0. For those who want to follow along, it is the theme API branch that's out there. And I actually went through, that file doesn't need to be there anymore. I did go through and deal with syncing off of master and getting that all merged back in. So it actually has quite a few changes, mostly so that the button assist pull request that was out there, I got that merged into master and then got master merged into this theming API, just so that we don't end up with two versions of effectively the same class. For those of you who may hear, I do have two small children that I am monitoring right now, so if I have to suddenly step away, I apologize, and we'll be back shortly. But my wife is not able to watch them right now, so I've got the baby monitor next to me. So if you see me glancing over, that's why. Okay, so let's pull up this pull request just so I can remember where I had left off, and we'll go from there, because I know it was very close to being able to get this merged in, and there's kind of a lot of additional changes that are starting to stack up behind this one. So I'm very much looking to try and get this merged in just so that we can get this going. And if people have questions, whether they're related to this or not, please feel free. I'm always open to questions or examples. I know Tide has been doing some work on the UI, cleaning this up, which is leading into some of the button color changes that Robert Snipes has been working on. All of those I'm wanting to get hopefully merged in here. So we'll jump over to the milestones, the 2.6.0. It was the requesting feedback one. And there was a couple comments from Robert on here that were really good that are probably also worth addressing. So let's make that a little bigger and zoom this guy down. I think Chrome's just struggling due to how many comments and all of the content on here. Okay, so if we get down where we left off before. So I had left this outstanding list of stuff that's on here. So the things on the docket for tonight are going to be these three guys here. I'm just going to start a little document off on the side so that I can keep myself on track and focused. Let's see. And yes, Notepad, the developer's to-do list of choice. This one has already been taken care of, like I said, with another pull request that was already merged into master. When I synced it over into the theming API, I basically blew away the one that was already in there, just because they were effectively the exact same class. I think the names even aligned perfectly, but one of them had comments, and so I went with that one. So yeah, Robert had commented with a little more information as far as the ripple on top, which is great. I kind of assume that's what it's used for. I do want to go through it and either verify that it is something that we want to keep in the core library, or move it out. So that's a to-do list for tonight. And there are a bunch of information. Robert, if you're watching this, thank you. I have been watching your branch, and I need to go through it in a lot more detail. But a lot of the changes that you're making in here, I do think I'm going to try and get merged into the 2.6.0 release, because I do think they would be good additions. And at least at cursory glance, I didn't see anything that was a breaking change for what was in there. So then moving along down here, there was some cleanup as far as expanding the styles, because for those of you who watched last time, in addition to just kind of the 4 color brushes that we had before, where there was the primary dark, mid, and light, now rather than just having a single secondary brush, there's I think it was accent dark, accent mid, and accent light, or similar to that. So effectively 6 color brushes rather than just 3. So, and it also looks like he had done a little cleanup on the demo page here. But then I know Tide had also seen this in regard to here. This comment down here is actually the more interesting one for tonight. So this is in regards to the color brushes that we have in here. So in WPF, brushes can be frozen. Effectively, it's a concept that allows you to take a mutable object like a brush and then turn it into an immutable object so that you can gain the performance benefits. By making it mutable, it means that all of the elements that use that brush have to be able to respond as, say, you change the color in the solid color brush. So in the theming library, specifically, let's just jump into this class. Come on, you can do it, computer. In here, this thing's all kinds of fast tonight. There is this set solid color brush method in here. And this is largely based on the old code that was in here before. But it makes this check to see if the brush is frozen. And if it's not frozen, rather than creating a new brush and just overwriting the original, it actually goes through and does a nice color animation transitioning from the backing color for that solid color brush to the new color so that you get this nice fade animation. Now the drawback with that is then there's a performance hit that comes along with being able to do this. And so this was in the original code in the library, but then all of the brushes that were previously in there were always being frozen. And so the question that Robert raises very accurately is whether these brushes should be frozen as well. And I think, at least for consistency, the answer is probably yes. And I think the answer that we're probably going to land on a little later is whether we should expose an option, now that we've got this better theming API, to be able to go through and allow somebody to toggle that off. Because if you weren't making heavy use of these, the performance implications probably aren't that bad. Again, it's really going to depend on your app and how much these are littered over, whether you're willing to take that. But I think potentially opening up an option for somebody to toggle that might be worthwhile. But I think for now what we're probably going to do is just freeze all of these brushes so that they line up. So we'll add that back to my to-do list so that we can get that going. Okay, and I see a lot of red, but I think this is just sharper red. So I think a recompile and we should be good to go. Grab beverage of choice while we wait for the whole solution to compile. Set that out of my way. Whew. compile ahead of time. This guy is going to take itself for a minute. So while it's thinking about what it's done, let's go through and look at this ripple on top option. Because I'm not saying that it necessarily needs to come out, but I do want to make sure that we understand what it is and why it's going into the library if it's going to be an API change. Because as the name obviously implies, it puts the ripple on top, which makes pretty good sense. Actually, here real quick, we're going to just flip that off, and I'm going to check and see if I've got something else running real quick, just to get some stuff shut down to make sure we aren't running too hot. Get some of my CPU and RAM resources back. Okay, there we go. Okay, and I have clearly botched something. So, I don't know as if I did anything with this after I did the merge back in. So let's take a quick look and see. So, in general, I'm looking for the base class that's probably broken, which is probably this one. So bundle assist CS will specify more than once in the sources parameter. Okay, so what this is telling us is that inside of the CS proj, even though I may have only taken one of the CS files, there are still two references to it inside of the CS proj. So, come on. What? Am I crazy? Oh, that is the colors project and not the main WPF project. That would be the first problem. Let's back up and try this again. Unload project. Because in general, whenever you run into a bunch of compilers like that, it's always best to start with sort of the base level project, fix those errors, and work your way up. A lot of the upstream errors will magically disappear as you get stuff cleared out. So button assist, there's one there, and there's one there. I'm going to take the one that's up in the alphabetical order and take that one right on out. Okay, and reload that project. And that's probably why ReSharper was squawking at me as well. So let's go back to our ripple assist. That's where we want to be. Okay, and hopefully it gets itself straightened out. The fact that ReSharper's happy again is a good sign. Okay, let's take a quick peek because what are you doing to me? You tell me there's more errors? One failed. Theme Manager Assist. Oh, another one that I forgot to remove from the CS proj. And this is one of the problems when you do merges like that, is occasionally, even though Git is perfectly happy to merge a file together because there's no conflicts on the same line, it doesn't mean that the resulting file is correct. So, third time's the charm, I hope. Because I'm really hoping that after this 2.6.0 release goes out the door, the next big feature that I want to make sure that we get in is probably going to be support for .NET Core 3.0, or as the new name, .NET 5. And so that will probably be the next release after 2.6.0. I don't know exactly what version that'll come in, or how we're going to rev the versions for it, because it's not necessarily a breaking change, so we don't need to go to 3.0, maybe just 2.7.0, and just skip any point releases on 2.6. I don't know, we will see. There's a couple people who have shown interest in doing it. One of it, which is the owner of the library, James, said that he was very keen on getting it in, so he may jump on it first. The other thing that we may look at if people are interested is we've been, or I should say I've been experimenting with moving the project over to Azure DevOps. There we go, compiled and happy. And so look at doing that transition. Nothing against AppVeyor. AppVeyor is awesome and wonderful. Their support has been nothing but amazing every time I've had to interact with them. But Azure DevOps lets you separate the build and release pipelines in a very nice way. And I'm hoping to take advantage of that to try to automate some of this process. Okay, so Ripple on top gets set there, which is great. It is interesting. I just noticing that this isn't a it is a dependency property, not an attached property, but registered with that syntax. Interesting. Is it set to inherit? Huh. That is interesting. Okay. Let's look down here because this is where the magic actually happens. So this line is way too long for me to look at. Jump down for a second here. Let's see. So panel z-index, Boolean to z-index. I'm guessing this is like a 0 or 1 conversion. If I was 2 or 0, okay. So in WPF, the z-index, by default, just back arrow enough times. The z-index in WPF is driven largely by the order in the XAML. However, you can go through and explicitly override the z-index if you, say, have a control that you want to ride on top of another one, which is effectively what this is doing. So in the event that, so let's see, if Ripple on top is false, this guy will end up being a 0 because I assume that second parameter is false. Yeah. So in the event Ripple on top is false, we get 0. Otherwise, we get, if it's true, we'll get a 2, which means this guy's Z order is either going to be 0, which is what it currently is just because it's the first child inside of this container grid, or 2, which will move it down to here. So this guy's panel Z-index is being fixed to 1. So basically, whether we want to have this guy float above or behind the content, which that is very, very interesting. That is interesting. So it works because this guy is capped here. I'm just wondering if it makes a lot of sense because this property seems very tied to a particular template. But at least in this library, there is only a single template for it. So then let's look at, so that's the implementation of it, but where is it ultimately getting used? Have we removed all usages of it? It doesn't seem right. I could have sworn this was used. Yeah. Full on top. Okay, let's just do a text search real quick. I don't always trust the find all references when dealing with XAML. Sometimes they get hidden. So the ones inside of the Ripple and the ones inside of Ripple Assist. Oh, that's probably the difference. So we've got a Ripple on top. Oh, I think there's 2 properties here. That's what's going on. So we've got a Ripple on top dependency property. Okay, so we can whack this commented code. But we've also got an attached property as well. I see. That, okay, so we definitely don't need both. And that's why it looks as though Got it. So it's the attached property that you can set higher up that will inherit all the way down. The attached property sets the dependency property on the Ripple class itself. Interesting. I wonder, I don't think we need both of these, because if we can set the attached property on a parent and have it inherit all the way down, I think I might just change, at a minimum, remove the dependency property on Ripple and just act on the attached property inside of the template. That way we don't necessarily change Ripple. Why is this guy? This bothers me. Is disabled. You should match the name of the property. Okay. Okay, so that makes sense. So now the question becomes, where is you are used? Because I thought we were using this inside of our new Ripple on top, themes, generic. Boy, it is not being used anywhere. So I'm torn. On one hand, I kind of like it, but on the other hand, I want to keep this pull request and feature scope down. So I think what I'm going to do is probably pull this out, but I'm going to do it in this. Let's do this real quick. So in Git, one of the ways you can kind of just save code, for example, create branch here. Ripple, let's do Ripple on top, right? Is I can create a separate branch, which is basically just a pointer to the same commit, and then I can persist my changes for this Ripple stuff inside of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch back to my theme API because GitKraken very helpfully toggles branches on me. Let's go ahead and go back. And then we'll go through. And I think what we'll do is we'll take this out and do this in 2 separate commits. Because I think I want to make sure that I can keep this. So let's go in here. Yeah, because I think I want this pull request to just be the theming changes and have some of this other stuff come along later. That way we can evaluate them in separate pull requests and take them one after the other. Okay, so clean up that extra white space. Keystroke for that, for those people who are interested, is Control-KD. It's this keystroke for format document, but it'll clean up trailing white space. For those who care, I do turn white space visible on. I know sometimes these dots annoy people, but I also really dislike tabs and spaces in the same document. Some people can make compelling arguments for when you should use tabs, and I'm not really interested in the tabs versus spaces argument. The one thing that I absolutely cannot abide is both used in the same document. That just makes me twitch. Okay, back on topic. Ripple assist, Boolean to Z index converter. I think this guy is probably the only guy referenced, so we'll clear that out. I do like how you even went to the effort of sealing it. And I think this guy is used by the Boolean visibility converter because I think he probably still has references. So let's see. Yeah, I see 2 references to it. Boolean to visibility converter, though. We're going to come back. I think that was on my list, isn't it? No. We might end up getting rid of this guy because there's a built-in converter to WPF that effectively does this. So we might look at its usages. But let's deal with the Ripple stuff first. So let's come back over to here. And that'll take you out of the mix. That'll take you out of the mix. And then let's look a little further down. And that'll take you out of the mix. And I think this should clean this up. Yeah, we'll probably need to just come back and look at that in a minute. What's this extra warning it's got up here? Ah, reference to Hex Grid. Just do a quick search. Do I have any more of those? Did not realize I left this in after we took the Hex Grid stuff out. Packet reference. We should probably, so this generic XAML is the only one that has it. So we'll do that. And then let's take a look at the find results. Nope. Nope. This guy. I should probably let Packet manage this file. But I'm not going to wait. I'm just going to do it manually. Seems simple enough to edit right there. Okay, so there's all of that. Let's make sure we still launch and run. I am surprised. I kind of want to go back and look at the, I wonder if it was used in the second color tool that we ended up no longer needing. I could have sworn I had seen a usage of this. And I thought it was in here somewhere. Look at that, Ripple Assist on top. It is right there. This is why I don't always trust it. Okay, so this guy is doing Ripple Assist. Okay, so let's take you out of the mix and let's just see what happens. Because without that ripple on top, the ripple should end up flowing behind. This is targeting the palette button. So what is using this? Exactly. So we've got these buttons, which is change button style, change primary foreground. Okay, so these are all the buttons at the bottom. Yeah, let's get this guy fired up and take a look, because I think what's probably going to happen is that ripple on those lower buttons where we were selecting the effectively which palette color we wanted to edit, that ripple is going to end up flowing behind the content. I think we might be able to adjust that though. I don't know. Does it matter? Let's look. What is the content in here? I think it's probably the fact that with the ripple behind, this border is effectively going to sit on top and we won't end up seeing it, I believe is going to be the problem. So let's fire that guy up, but I think we can address that. I think that's a simple fix. Because what we can end up doing then is effectively putting the button with the ripple on top of this background brush. Because the whole point of that area is to show what that color is so that you can watch that brush change. So let's go and take a quick peek. So the new color tool. I'm also interested in people's feedback. We've left in the palette and the color tool oh, we've got, apparently when I merge this, I broke the corner radius stuff. Really should have tested my stuff before just pushing it straight back. Incompatible type of corner radius. Interesting. Okay, so let's take a look. Corner radius there. Where's the animation? Button quarter radius 0. That's not the double animation. So let's go and look and see what this is. This is a corner radius. Is there a nice, easy, trying to remember, I use this so seldom. Is it basically just like the thickness struct? I think it probably is. Yeah, it looks like it. Basically the same as the thickness that you might set for margin or padding, with just different names. Okay, so let's take a look then. So this is all about the animation through here, because these are the errors that we were running into. For now, just whack these style triggers, just in the interest of, where did I start from? Style triggers. Just in the interest of staying focused on the other one. I think that'll deal with one problem at a time. And then we'll come back. Feels like my list is getting longer. Go through and do this. Because I think a little restructuring of these buttons down here so that we don't necessarily need the ripple on top would probably be my preferred option. Yeah, because I think we can probably clean these guys up. Come on, little computer, you are really struggling tonight. I know, it's hard. There you go. Okay, so yeah, effectively these buttons down here are the problems. So before, when you would click on these, you would see the nice ripple effect come out from them. And now I believe what's happening is the ripple is behind these large blocks of color, and we're no longer seeing those pretty ripples. So we want to fix that. So I think this might be, so which one is this? Primary selection. So we've got the live XAML editing. We're just going to see how much we can get away with just in one shot. Ooh. So that definitely fixes it, but that's not quite what we were going for. Because that is the whole background, not just, so let's see, what do we got going on here? Can't find a good place to put my window. We've got a grid with 3 rows. So 1, 2, 3, because the middle one is double the weight of the bottom one, and the top one is just auto size. So before, with the background down here, which was the look we were going for, this whole thing is the button. But I think if I look really closely, you can kind of see this white border around the outside. You can see just the end of the ripple trigger. You can kind of see it go out from the mouse there. So yeah, it is floating behind. So ultimately, okay, so that ripple was actually going over all of them. So this whole thing allows clicking. That is an interesting problem if you wanted to actually set these buttons on top and let them flow through and have the whole area be clickable. That is an interesting problem. So without that ripple assist on top, maybe I go back and we just leave it in. It might be the easiest. So I don't think there's a cleaner way to do this to effectively make sure that your ripple is always visible. Because in general, the fundamental issue here, like for example, if I just take this background brush off, right? So we no longer have this. Now when we click, we can actually see our ripple flow through. It's light, but it's there. Maybe it's not light for you guys, and it's just light on my screen. Yeah, I think I've changed my mind. So let's go back. Our work in progress changes here. So let's go through and undo a few things. So I think we're going to keep a couple of these changes and whack a few others. See, I'll make this a little bigger. Can I zoom in? Do you not allow zoom? Here's the zoom. Big as you go. There we are. Okay, so let's see. That we're going to come back to and deal with. But first we're going to get this thing going. I don't believe we need the converter. And I think we want to leave the ripple change out. I think it's just the ripple assist that we want to put back. And I think we'll go through and change this. But Get Cracking is taking its sweet time. Okay, so we like that change. Let's see here. Discard. So we'll bring that back. Probably actually should have not done that bit, but whatever. We'll get rid of that in a minute. And then back down here, don't think we need the converter. I don't think we need the setter there. But I believe we want this binding back. So discard line. Okay, so we will go back and deal with that. And then on the color tool, just make sure we set it back in our style again. So those ones, style trigger, and this line here that we commented out. So we will undo that change. Okay, go away, Get Cracking. Okay, so that should be, that lives there, that lives there. So this we have to clean up because we no longer have a, did not realize it let me do all that while debugging. So it no longer has a property on the ripple class itself to be the target of the name of. So as with most attached properties, we just end up with a hard-coded string. Some people go through and declare constants for these. I don't see the point of it most of the time if the constant is only used in one place. If you need it in two places, then certainly declare it, but I usually wait until I need it in both places. Okay, but now back on our template, I think we go back down here and we're going to bring this line down again. And then I'm going to bring the path. I usually like putting my path first, just because it seems like the most important property. And when doing bindings in WPF, ripple assist, to bind to an attached property, you wrap it in parentheses so that it knows how to parse that properly. Why not use name of ripple on top? Because before it was working, because we had a dependency property declared on the ripple class directly. I don't think we need the dependency property on the ripple class if we already have an attached property that's going to inherit all the way down. So on this framework metadata, let's just wrap this because that's a long line too. It's setting this inherit so that it will flow all the way down. And so if we set this back up on our button, this attached properties value will flow all the way down to the ripple class, and we can just use it directly. But because there's no property actually target for the name of, We can't use this because it has property on the end of it. And since we've gotten rid of the property that was declared on the class, there is no name of to actually be the target of. Good question, Magnus. Let's jump back here. Exactly. Yeah, so effectively we only have that. So I believe that should get it back up and working. I think that's probably the cleaner approach to go through and do. Oh, this isn't going to work because we're using a converter, and the converter is not there anymore. So let's fix that. Cancel. So the other thing is, I don't think I effectively actually need the converter. I go back and forth on whether I like writing converters or whether I like doing things in pure XAML. There are arguments for both sides. I really like XAML. It's somewhat of a personal preference because it avoids me having to make the same logic multiple times. However, I would say if you end up using the logic in more than one place, it's probably worth consolidating it into a converter. So a bit of a judgment call. But I think in this case, because we're only using this converter in one place, I am just going to do it in XAML and eliminate it. That way it's a little more clear. And that is not the name of the property. Target type canvas. So we will, the default value of the Z index, I'm now questioning whether it does default to 0 or whether it defaults to something very large and negative. I think for purposes of paranoia and to be explicit, we're just going to set it to 0 just to make sure. If somebody wants to check the docs on that and tell me what it defaults to, that would be great. But we are going to jump down here and do data trigger, binding, and actually we're just gonna snag this whole sucker. I think we can probably even I'm gonna put this here for a minute, but I think we can. I'm realizing that because of the way we set this guy up, I think we can get away with just a regular trigger, can't we? Because I think I can just do the same type of thing that I did before. I do this so seldom with attached properties where you're doing the direct bindings like this. True. Why is that? My IntelliSense has lost its mind. Ah, so you don't need the parens on this guy. We'll take those off. I think the resharper has just lost its mind and is very confused. All right, so because I am a panel, because I'm a canvas, I don't need to fully qualify the property name. So value 2. I think that works. So rather than having a converter that it has to run through every time, it'll just default the Z index to 0. And then if this ripple on top attached property on the canvas, so not even on the ripple assist, we're letting that attached property propagate all the way down to the canvas itself, since it's going to be there anyway. And then we will toggle it back over and set it to 2. I think I like that better. And this guy should just magically work. And if this works, I think this is probably the way we'll end up going with the ripple assist. like I said, this is sort of the pattern I like doing a lot, where I end up doing my simple conditional logic straight in my XAML. It does mean that I end up writing a lot more XAML. It's a lot more wordy and not necessarily always obvious to people what's happening. But if I don't need the logic in more than one place, or I can consolidate it into a single style and reuse the style in multiple places, I tend to like that better. Again, personal preference. A lot of people do the value converter approach, and it works just fine. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's see how this plays out. So I click. Oh, and it works. The ripple is back on top. So smooth, so smooth. Okay, I think I like this approach best. So then we keep the feature, but in a slightly reduced scope. I'm okay with that. Okay, so this is compiled and working, and so I'm going to take that off my to-do list. And I think the next guy up is the corner radius animations. That's going to be the next guy to deal with, because apparently when I did the corner radius stuff, I broke it. And that was not good. So where did, okay, so I'm in the wrong place. So let's close out all the ripple stuff, since that should be good. Let's look real quick. While I've got the Boolean converter open, since this guy is only referenced here, and this guy is only used here, I'm wondering if this guy's used at all. So he is used to be able to toggle different true-false values. Got it. Okay, so we're going to leave that alone. There is a built-in Boolean to visibility converter. So this guy's utility, so I totally get the, let's just jump to one of those real quick and we'll explain it. So like in this case, it's being used to invert it. So if it's true, we're going to collapse the element, otherwise false, make it visible. If these values were inversed and true was visible and false was collapsed, I would end up getting rid of this, because there's a built-in Boolean to visibility converter straight in WPF that you can use yourself, and I'd end up throwing this away. But so this guy in his default implementation is probably bad, but in this implementation works just fine. So, and maybe this was here prior. I don't know if this was a change. It may have just been a small refactor, but regardless, that's fine. That works. We'll leave it. What's this suggestion here? Merge cast with type check. Oh yeah. So with bool value, we'll clean this up real quick. So with C# 7, we have what's called pattern matching. So the is operator will do the type check, and then you can assign a value that will get assigned if the conversion succeeds. So this is effectively the equivalent of writing bool value if value is bool. This is going to be a very long, wordy version. Bool value gets type conversion value, and then doing the ternary operator on it. This is technically not quite equivalent, because this is going to end up doing two type checks, one for the is operator and one for the direct cast. So this is just a very efficient way of getting both of those operators in one and not having to duplicate it multiple times over. So we will just t-value. So by doing this, it allows you to get both a type check and an assignment in a single operation rather than in two. So minor improvements, but we'll clean those up while we're in here. Okay, so back in the color tool, I had broken, I believe it was up here, all of these animations. And so these guys are failing because The previous button assist that was in here, if we go through and look at the history, had a corner radius type of, I want to say, int or double. And so, well, actually it was almost assuredly double, given that these are double animations. So this was just animating it, and then it was converting these into a corner radius further down. The problem is now the property itself is a corner radius, which is great because it allows you to say, rather than just setting the corner radius to 0, you could set the corner radius to 0, 2, 4, 6 if you wanted different corner radiuses on each of the 4 corners, right? So top left, top right, bottom left, because everything kind of goes clockwise for what we have. But it now means that we've got this guy down here who's a bit of a problem. And trying to think, I don't know if there is a corner radius animation. Come on, don't ever. The speed of this is absolutely astounding me. Because I know there was like a thickness animation. Maybe that was one that I had built at one point. Point animation, rect. Maybe that's what I'm getting it confused with. No, there's thickness animation. So there is a thickness animation, but there's not a corner radius animation, which is a problem. So how do we want to go about doing this? So I think what we might do is just cheat. And I think what we're going to cheat a little bit. So on all WPF elements, there is a tag property. So what we can end up doing, and we're just going to set this guy to 0, is I think we're going to just do a value converter to go from double to corner radius. And we might even be able to get away with not even doing the value converter, because the type converter for corner radius might just handle it for us. So rather than doing this where we set corner radius value to 0, I'll just bring this down here. These don't have to be in this order, but I feel that things that are similar should go together. So what we can do though is then bind this, binding tag relative source self. So we'll bind the corner radius property to the tag property. And then rather than setting this guy like this, we'll just set the tag property instead. And I think, so the advantage of this route is I think this will just work with the implicit type conversions. I don't know. I think it will. We'll find out. But if it doesn't, it gives us a place where we can put in a value converter to convert from one type into another. And I think this is probably, there's other ways you could beat up these storyboards to make them work the way we want. One of which is actually just roll our own corner radius animation, but I don't really, that's a lot more effort when in this case we're really just trying to convert from a double to a corner radius. So let's give that a shot. That might be the easiest option, assuming that it works, obviously. That takes, I think, 2 things off our list. And then we get this corner radius, a couple other small ones, freezable brushes, and maybe we finally get this guy merged. With any luck, I'll get some, if we don't get it done tonight, I might take a stab at trying to finish it this weekend, assuming things go well. But we will see. The family, I never am sure how much free time I'm going to be able to devote to coding. Come on, little buddy. You can do this. Boy. Okay, so let's take a quick look at this guy. So color tool there. And wow. I think the streaming is killing me. So let's see here. System cannot animate the tag. Oh, because the double animation is wanting to animate a double property, which is the fundamental problem that we were running into. Got it. Boy, that is not quite what I wanted to see. Is there an easy way to do this? I'm just trying to think if there's a better option. You can always go to like an object animation. That just feels hacky, and I don't want to go down to something with individual keyframes and try to manage it that way. That just takes away all of this. Because it does have a nice, smooth feel to it. Because before, the property was a double, and what was happening is down on the double assist, it was grabbing that double and applying it straight to the button, which was then allowing it to rotate. Oh, sweet. The wife is home and able to grab the kids. Excellent. Okay, so let's clean that up. This is interesting. Because it would be nice. We could go through and do something similar with our own attached property and animate it through that way. I guess that would work. So one thought I have is inside of the demo project, so not something that would go out as part of the library, create our own attached property that then converts this double corner radius into a corner radius object. Because I don't really want to change the type of this property. I like the freedom to be able to go through and set this on each of the corners individually. But at the same time, it is also nice to be able to go through and animate these. But I think the animation case is probably a bit more rare than wanting to set the corner radiuses individually. I think that's what we're going to do. I think that's probably what I want to do here. I really hate to put extra magic inside of the demo project because I want it to be as simple as possible for people who want to duplicate it. But this view here is a little bit less about showing off the controls and more about doing pretty color theming. So I think I'm more okay with it here. So we'll just create a button assist inside of here. It's going to only contain attached properties, so it can be static. Let's see here. WPF. Oh, what is it? Attached property. There we go. And so this one, in this case, will be a double, and we will call it, how about uniform corner radius spelling counts. Yeah, I think that'll be fine. And so this guy here, what we're going to end up doing then is on his property changed. So my naming scheme that I usually do for all of these type of methods is on and then property name. That makes the most sense to me. So when this guy changes, all he's going to do is grab, let's see, we're going to have to fully qualify this. Material design themes, WPF, button assist, set corner radius. We will use the same dependency object, and we will new corner radius with a uniform value of whatever this is set to. And I think we will just default this guy to there so that it matches. Not that I think it matters because we're really just going to be relying on this set operation to occur. And so then this becomes, rather than material design, this becomes local because it's now in this project, button assist, uniform corner radius. And then we just need to make these same changes down here. All of that just to convert between the two types. If anyone else has a cleaner solution of how to do this, like I said, I know there's other ways of doing it, but I'm looking for something that's ideally either simpler for people to understand, that doesn't require an extra class, or doesn't require a ton of extra XAML to make it work. So open to suggestions, very open to pull requests as always. Let's give that a shot. So what exactly is this animating? Material design raised button. So it's animating the corner radius of these buttons. So when the mouse is over, or let's see, I see. So this is the, okay. So this is once again those same buttons down below. So if we go to the color tool, so these guys here, you can see that animation as those guys go through, and when you click on it, it shrinks in so that you get that nice look all the way through. There. Okay, that's back to working. That makes me feel better. Cool. Okay, another thing off the list. Okay, so let's go back and talk about freezing brushes. So I think, because that's something that very much needs to be handled. Before we get carried away, let's commit changes. So real quick, verify what branch I'm on. Still on the theme API branch. Stage all changes, and then we'll just look them over real quick and make sure I'm not as crazy as I think I am. So button assist. While you get cracking, if you're going to be this slow, I might have to switch over to using Visual Studio. Come on. That one we just added. Great. Let's see. So this is the change for our corner radius stuff, which works great. We removed an empty border style. Great. Looks good to me. Let's see. Demo CSproj, we added a file. Wonderful. We cleaned this converter up with pattern matching there. Deleted the other one. Let's see. Removed the no longer needed converter and fixed the compile issues of missing file and button assist. Let's see here. Which actually means I didn't realize that theme manager assist class was one of the things on our to-do list, but now it is gone. Huzzah, one less thing to look at. Okay, so packet reference, I think this was just removing the hex grid stuff, which it is. Again, normally you wouldn't edit these files directly, you'd let packet manage them. White space cleanup and formatting of the curly braces. Removed the ripple on top property in favor of just using the attached property. Here's the fix the naming of the region just so it matches, and then ripple on top, and this is where we had to switch it off of the name of because we got rid of the property from the class. See, back to our ripple theme. So this was removing the hex grid resource dictionary, great. Removing the unneeded converter, removing the unneeded set on the ripple class. Down here we got rid of the panel Z index setter in favor of just doing a simple trigger. Again, I don't know if this setter is 100% needed, but I think it at least makes it clear that we're toggling it back and forth between 0 and 2 very explicitly. So we'll leave it. Great. So cleaned up ripple on top to just use the attached property. Fixed compile issues with missing file references. Let's see, fixed demo project to handle type change of corner radius. Sweet. So there's that. And let's get cracking. Figures itself out. Let's just push that up. So, and I think this ripple on top branch I can get rid of now because I don't think we're going to be needing it anymore since we actually kept the feature in. Cool. Okay, freezing brushes. So resource dictionary extensions. This is where it creates a whole bunch of brushes. And I think I'm okay with leaving this logic in. The issue here is when we're creating a new brush, whether we should freeze it or not. And this is where I could very much see allowing an extension to change this. But I think what we're going to do, so this comment is pretty meaningless at this point. Set value directly. Yes, that is what this line of code is doing. So var new brush. New brush goes there. I think we want to go new brush, freeze it. Because what Robert was accurately pointing out is on the built-in themes, we can probably pick on any of these, is all of these brushes have this extra attached property put on them, where it, I'm going to navigate. Oh, this is the presentation options, where it can actually go through and freeze the brush. So when it's created in this resource dictionary, it'll actually freeze it so that you get the performance gains of having an immutable object. Before, when we were just directly assigning this, and I think this may have actually been a bug in the old one as well. Now I'm curious. Let's take a quick gander at the old code, because I suspect this was actually, this is broken in the current stuff. And broken is a very loose term, I will point out. Broken in that the first time you change the color theme, it wouldn't animate, but the second time it would. So WPF themes, I am one level too deep, and it should be the palette helper, I believe is where this code used to live, down near the bottom if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so this is effectively the exact same method as before, except for it doesn't fall back to using the parent dictionary stuff has been changed. But it is doing this new value. So let's look at this. So was new value coming in? Yeah, so it was just blindly creating new brushes and not freezing them. So on the current library, if you're doing these dynamic color changes, it probably doesn't animate on the first time, but it does on subsequent changes. That is interesting. And that is almost assuredly a bug. So it'll be nice and fast for you unless you start changing themes, and then it won't be. And I shouldn't say it won't be. Then it'll be mildly different. I think that was probably what, let me go back down to Robert's comment and make sure I fully understand what he was saying, but I think that's probably, yeah, so this is what it does. The history of the function. Frozen attribute was added for this reason. And with the obsolete check if the brush was frozen. So I don't think the check is obsolete, because once you change the brushes, it was changing them to an unfrozen brush. So if you did multiple theme changes, it would then animate. Unwise to leave it out. Yeah, I was going to call the freeze method on there. So once again, Robert, great comment. Is this in? Let's take a quick look at his palette helper real quick, because he was doing some work in here. And I suspect this is just a mild change version of the same. Yeah, so let's see, what does he pull in here? So he checks if it's in there and if it's a solid color brush. If it's not there, he just sets it. Otherwise, he builds up a color animation, does the solid color brush, and equates the animation. Okay. I think, yeah, so I think I agree with him. I think we should be freezing these brushes consistently, and I think it would be a great change if somebody wanted to. So by leaving this check in here, if someone else wants to, you can go through and copy your favorite theme colors that you want. So for example, if you're using amber, bring in your own brushes that have the same keys and just leave the freeze attribute off. I think what we probably should do at some point is allow for passing a flag through to basically toggle whether this freeze method gets called. That way you could control if you wanted your brushes frozen or not. But I think for now we will just always freeze them, because that will match at least the behavior of what was in there for people who weren't doing the changes. Just wondering if that's going to, if any of you who are watching have feedback on whether, because this is technically a breaking change, but if we don't do it, it breaks people who don't do theme changes. And I feel like the people who don't do theme changes are probably the bigger group. Since there's no way for, I'm wanting this to behave consistently, there's no good way for me to both call and not call this method. So I think for now, unless I get feedback, is we're probably just going to freeze the brushes and just take the performance benefit. Freezing new brushes. And I think that will go in there. And that's probably that is a good change. So one more thing off the list. Okay, so last thing on the pull request list that needs to get addressed is the shadow adorner assist class. Because it showed up and I did not understand what it was being used for, and I want to understand it before we let it go into the library. So what do we got in here? So let's clean up some of these types. So effects render has a changed callback, updated adorner. It's probably unlikely to occur, but I think I'd rather do UI element. Well, let's figure out what it's used for before we clean up this direct cast. Internal adorner property, update adorner. Shadow adorner. Okay. Clean those up. This guy, let's see, doc panel, convert to local variable. Let's just clean these guys up all the way through. And do we need you? You can be read only. Clean that up. Always easier to read when I can see what's going on. That's my cursor. Too many properties. It's too many properties. Let's break these guys onto multiple lines so I can see what's going on. So drop shadow effect, which adds a blur radius, shadow, direction, color and opacity. So it's very similar to some of the other ones. Sure, arranging. You can just be a Lambda body member and be done. So you have 6 references. Show them to me. Internal on the assist class. Okay, so they're all coming from here. Let's just do a quick search. Oh, this is probably why I missed that reference last time. I didn't have it set to entire solution. That is almost good to know, Magnus. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's probably best to freeze them so that we don't accidentally add additional performance hits to people who aren't doing the theming changes. Shadow Adorner Assist appears to be unused at this point. Really? Well, this might be a very easy change. Because I do like, I know this is one of the things that Robert was talking about that he was trying to get with his fancy list, which I do like, but I do want to keep this pull request to just the theming changes. So we're going to just take these 2 guys out for now, and then make sure this guy compiles and runs. Didn't I tell you to? Oh, different class. Different class. Different class. That should have 2 removes, right? 2 removes, which is good. Now save the project. So I should have 3 edits. There's the 3rd one. Okay, let's just make sure we're still in a good state, and then I think we can probably look at merging this pull request, which would be awesome. Which I think would be great, because again, I do want to get this in to at least the preview builds so that we can get it out there and have people play with it and hopefully provide feedback before 2.6.0 goes live. Because I would like some people to try it beyond just me. It's always one of those weird situations of I put something together for the way that I like it and not always sure if it makes the most sense to everybody. So I do appreciate those of you who give feedback on, you know, things that aren't working. Come on, come on. Boy, I gotta look. What is chewing up my processing power? Let's see here. I have a hunch it's probably just the streaming stuff that is eating up most of my compute power. At some point I will probably end up getting a little bit nicer machine for this. Hey Yeti. Let's see. Yeti Man 01, I guess. Yeah, I am definitely a XAML enthusiast. You will find me doing a lot of XAML. At some point, we may end up even doing some Xamarin Forms on this stream, just because I do love my Xamarin, and being able to take my WPF knowledge and write mobile apps with it is awesome. Okay, so I think we are probably in a really good shape. I do want some feedback. I'm not going to block this pull request for it, but at some point there needs to be a merging or something done between this palette and color tool views. So those need to be cleaned up a little bit so that we don't end up with two separate things both acting on the same set of brushes. Now, they both work interchangeably. I will point that out. It is perfectly valid to come in here and go, look, my color changes here, I change it over here, and my world completely crashes. It's not from the standard swatches. Ah, right, because if you use the new, okay. So I shouldn't say they completely work interchangeably. If you start mixing the old API and the new API together, your world will break. But let's actually go back and test that real quick, because you should, if you aren't using the new API to set your theme, the old API should still work for you. So people shouldn't, I don't want to make people have to actually go through and change any code that they have. But if you do switch your code to use the new APIs, please switch it to use the new APIs exclusively, because you will run into some of these weird cases where the brushes aren't exactly aligned, especially if you do things like I did where you are doing random colors. So I should be able to go into the palette. There should be no problem for me picking up these guys and using them interchangeably. Right. But then if you switch over and do the new APIs and then go back, there could be problems depending on what colors you pick, because the old APIs are always going to try to query your current palette and assume that the colors exist in the known color palette, which is not true if you use the HSB color picker, because you can pick any color. So again, at some point I want to merge these things together and perhaps have a little example where people can see the XAML that they need to put in their app.xaml. So just something to make it a little bit nicer and easier. Okay, so I think let's check these guys in, and we will let the CI system check our work, and we will be good to go. So removing shadow, adorner, assist for now, unused and not related to the theming changes. Cool. We will run run through here and get this guy merged. We will have a much better feature. So let's go down here and push and synced. So it should have gone, and hopefully refresh the page, because I'm guessing this guy, this is not showing the latest commits from tonight. So I'm guessing it just hasn't gone through yet. And lots of commits. Lots and lots of commits. History, commits. Lots and lots of commits, more changes, and then we're going to let this guy go. And assuming that build passes, so this is, I have started migrating some of it over to Azure DevOps, just because I like this view. So you will notice things are going to start slowly moving off of that there onto Azure DevOps. So don't worry if you see those changes coming through. Okay, so let's switch and do something a little different for the moment. There was a question that came through on the chat room that I was going to look at that I thought was rather interesting. So we're going to close that for the moment. And let's switch over to my example repository. So there is a, I'll jump back to my GitHub real quick. Oh, hold up. We might have a problem. Something did not. So which of these checks failed? And this build failed? Well, that doesn't sound good. What did I do? No, not the button we wanted. We wanted to see the errors, please. Let's check these guys out. What did we do here? Resource dictionary. Default literal is not available in C# 7.0. Please use language 7.1 or greater. Okay. So this will be an issue I will come back to. So basically it works on my box because I'm using VS 2019 with the latest C#. And the build agent clearly is not. So that needs to be updated and pointed to the latest stuff. So I will get that fixed, and I suspect since it compiled and ran on my machine, it should work just fine. So back to where we were going. We were talking about GitHub and a question that came through on the chat. So let's pull this up. And run over to mine. I will show you guys where this is at. So I keep a large repository of material design examples in a repo just sitting there, because a lot of times I found that people have questions, or there's certain techniques that I ended up just repeating a lot when people had questions. And so I started just compiling a list, and there's quite a bit here. So it is GitHub Kebu Material Design Examples. At the bottom of it, you'll also find some links to some blog posts that I've written on some introduction stuff, some MVVM stuff for WPF, which I think is the most valuable way to actually build a WPF app. I know some people disagree, but I will get off my soapbox. So the question that came through was actually around doing animations, specifically going through and animating the a card. Let's go through here. We'll close this. One thing I will show real quick is a lot of these examples actually leverage a utilities library that's down here. You'll notice there's two kind of projects. One of them is just a project with randomly generated test data, because occasionally you need test data to show. And then there's this other utilities one that basically does almost like XAML reflection to let you go through and modify properties, because there's a lot of times where we want to make a change to a property that may not necessarily be exposed. And it doesn't always make sense to expose every property possible in the library. So if you see something referencing the utilities namespace, it's just this project down here. I thought about making a NuGet out of it, but for now, if it's useful to you, feel free to just copy the code. There's only a couple classes here, and bring it directly into your project. I was going to go and grab an example link of the animation that we're going to look to try to do. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, so I'll bring this guy over here. So the question was if it was possible to go through and generate effectively, let's see if I can show it here. So it's this pixiejs.com, but as you scroll, you'll notice, so let's see if I can get to the bottom and get it to trigger. Maybe I should just reload the page. So let's just relaunch. Watch these cards. When they first come in, you'll notice that they have a slight, come on, go ahead and load. Thinking. Was it because I'm too far down? Oh, it's because I'm too far down. Let's relaunch one more time. So you'll notice they kind of slide in from the side, and then they have a sort of a kind of almost a fade on top of it as well. And they've got this fancy little mouse over effect, which I don't know if we'll get to that, but I wanted to try and at least replicate that kind of fade and slide in effect on the card, just to have an example of doing that kind of animation. So in WPF, all animations are done via the storyboards. And how you get access to those storyboards is usually through like the Visual State Manager, if you're in the middle of writing like a control template, or you can trigger them manually from your code behind, or you can go through and do them with like an event trigger, which may be where we end up going here. So shadow animation, not the one we were going for. I have not pulled my latest code. So let me pull it. Let me just sync this guy up real quick. So there is an example I have started for doing exactly that. So sync, get the latest stuff. We'll see about actually doing that slide animation in and see if we can make it look nice and pretty. At some point I may have to start breaking these projects into their own solution or separating them somehow, because this is getting to be a very unwieldy solution with a ton of projects in it. Especially since most of these are unrelated to each other. Okay, so there is a card slide animation project. So all I did is I started off with just a brand new blank WPF project, and then went and brought in the material design library. I pulled in the standard resource dictionaries, so light theme, default control styles, and then blue for the primary, purple for the accent color, just because I've been trying to standardize on all the colors in this example repo. Nothing other than me being a little picky. The main window itself is pretty simple. We've got a grid with a button in the first row, and then we've got a card that's largely going to fill up the big portion of the second row to kind of simulate that behavior. The card itself just has a simple pack icon, and I'll just set this guy as my startup and fire him up real quick. And it should be fairly straightforward. And so what I'm thinking I want to do is go through, and when you click the button, basically re-trigger that animation. So unlike the web page where I keep having to refresh to make that occur, it actually will go through, and here I will, for those people who want it, there's the link of the web page in question. I think it's probably easier to see on your own machine than on mine. And come on, little buddy, you can do it. So simple, but when we click this button, we want to see this guy actually go through and animate and do some fun stuff. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is, let's go through first and give this guy a name so that we can reference him. And in the interest of simplicity, let's just go through and do this straight in the, I think in the code behind is probably easiest. Maybe. And we could declare the storyboard right here. No, let's just do it in the code behind. That's probably the. I do try to keep these examples whatever is the absolute simplest I can get away with. So don't always take them as great examples of how I would structure everything, because the intent is really just to make them simple, easy to understand. Okay, so first thing we need is a storyboard. And you'll have to forgive me, I do most of these in XAML, so doing this down here is a slight deviation for me. So I believe what we're going to do is begin, and I think we just give it the name of our card to be the containing element. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, so on all the storyboards, when they eventually get to the end, they have a couple of different things that they can do. And this is usually the thing that trips most people up, is if you animate a property, when it reaches the end of the storyboard, it can either stop and effectively undo all of the property changes that it's done, or it can hold its values. And in general, you probably want hold end on most of them, but it is worth knowing that if a storyboard is holding a property at its end value and you try to change it, the storyboard is going to come in right behind you and set it right back, because it's effectively going to hold that value right there. So just be aware of that. And I think that's probably the only thing we need to set as far as that goes. Because there's various things for, I don't think we need to set the duration of the begin time. We're going to do those individually on the children. So, and I think that's probably good enough for now. So the next one, I believe, is the children, and we add a new, so let's see. So we are going to start with a double animation, I think. And so let's take a quick look at what we have. So on this card, let's just start with the simple fade values. So we're going to start its opacity at 0, and we will fade it into 1, which seems simple. Actually, let's pull this guy out. Pull this guy out and declare him up here. I think what we might actually do is read only storyboard. We might just do this. think down here, doesn't it have a global state? I was thinking I would go through and just basically toggle it and reset it every time, but I might. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Because it does have a completed event. I thought there was like an active check to know if it's running or not. Begin time, auto reverse, name, repeat behavior, speed. What does clock state give me? Oh, cool. So, act filling stopped. They're also stopped. Well, we might try this. We might try this down here. So, for now, storyboard, begin on card. We'll go right here. Okay, so double animation. We are going to animate 2, 1, and let's do, how long do we want to go? So time span, let's do from milliseconds, maybe animate it for 200 milliseconds. Okay, so let's verify that this at least works. Is it unhappy that my capitalization is wrong? Is that what it's looking at? Click button, and the world goes done. Must specify a target. Oh, right, because we can't just say double animation and not tell it what to animate. That does not make much sense. So, opacity animation. Okay, so opacity animation. Let's see, where is target property type? Oh, it is storyboard. Set target property and opacity animation. I don't remember exactly what it's on, so I'm just going to do card opacity property. Oh, it wants a property path. Oh, okay. So name of card.opacity. Opacity animation. I think this is closer. Okay, nice fade in. I think so. Given the performance of this, I'm not entirely sure. So from seconds, actually, does this guy allow me to get away without passing a duration? Because I'm wondering if I just set a total time. No, because it's going to want to hold all of them. I could probably, from seconds, let's just do 2 so that we can actually see the animation happen. I realize that the opacity change is going to be pretty quick in the end, but for here, this will work. Huzzah! And I think the other thing we'll do will probably make our life a little easier. Let's go from 0 to 1. So what this will end up doing is when we go and begin the storyboard, it'll set the starting value from 0 and animate to 1. Whereas if you just have a 2 value, it'll end up animating to 1 from wherever it's at. So it brings it in, great. Brings it in again, much better. Much better. Okay, what are you squawking about here? Oh, it wants to do a rename. I think what we're actually going to end up doing is just lowercase this, make it match. Okay, so that handles that, and time span, I think we'll do, I think the 200 milliseconds is probably a lot closer. So now I'd like to get the kind of slide in effect from the right. So on WPF, there are two types of transforms. There is a layout transform and a render transform. And the difference is a little subtle but very important to note. So a layout transform will transform the object during the layout pass when WPF is figuring out where elements should go. The render transform happens after the item's been laid out and given its space. And so, for example, if you were to like rotate an object 45 degrees in its layout transform, it'll get enough space for that rotation. Whereas if you do it in a render transform, it won't necessarily have enough space. However, the render transforms are a lot faster because it doesn't have to cause a layout pass and affect other elements as it's changing. So most of the time you actually want to use the render transforms for just about everything until the thing that you need to transform really should affect the layout. But I usually try to design around not needing a layout transform as much as possible. So we are going to set a render transform. Let's just grab this guy. Put it at the top. I generally try to put my properties above my content, even though you can put it above or below. And the simplest thing to do is a translate transform. We'll just give him a name. So translate transform. Right. So these guys here have effectively two properties on them, an X and a Y. Now I think for him, I might translate as X over 100 pixels. And because this is the only thing in this grid row, he's got that whole space of the window to work with, but he's centered, so a lot of that space goes unused. So we're just going to shift him to the right 100 pixels, and then we'll animate him back across. So I think what we do here then is we go, let's just grab this whole block again, and we'll do with translate animations, and we will go from 100 to 0, effectively bringing it back to the center. And I think we're going to make this one take a little bit longer. And go at 400, and this is going to be, let's see, translate transform. It's going to be the X property, but we want the storyboard set target to be different on this guy, and we are going to do the translate target transform, and we want to set it on the animation, and we want the value of it to be this instance. And then we should add it into our storyboard. So it's worth noting that the begin time of both of these and the clock as it's animating are both going to start at 0. So it's going to change the opacity and translated at the same time. I think that gets us pretty close. Take a look. Let's see. Cannot resolve all property reference is in the property path X. Oh, because we've got two different targets of our storyboard. Right. So let's just do this. Let's do this and change this guy up, because I think if we just change you over to be the card, no. Set the animation to be the card, rather than having the target element be passed in at the storyboard level, we'll pass it in on the individual animation level. And then we'll just start the storyboard. Nope. Property path X. Translate, transform. And the verify the applicable objects support the properties. What? Why am I? Oh. Right. Let's go back. Because the property path actually needs to be relationship to the card. So this was just card.opacity. So this should actually be sorry about that. Okay, so this property path should actually be in relationship to the card, or mapped down to the card, the same way that you might specify it when you were declaring a binding. It's the same object. So we actually want card.renderTransform, and from renderTransform down into here. So is that right? So this was just card opacity, render transform, translate transform, which is that guy in there. I think that's what we want. Let's try again. No. Must specify a target property for media animation, double animation. Oh, because I cannot copy and paste correctly. Or as I usually call it, editor inheritance. Okay, so I think we are getting very close. And simple animation. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Fade, slide from the side. Okay, so this guy needs to be a little bit faster. Maybe more along the lines of 300. And maybe actually even shorten him up a little bit rather than going from 100. Maybe we'll go from like 80. And I don't think we really need. So this guy doesn't need to be set directly anymore. The opacity needs to be set because we want the thing hidden before we click the button the first time, but that isn't really necessary. So in this guy, we can do the name of by using the class name rather than the instance name. So we don't need that anymore. And let's see if that looks a little better. And that's what I'm talking about. A little bit like that. And obviously, I am not necessarily a designer, and so I know some designers get very picky about their animations and their key timings and all of that. So if you have a designer that's picky about it, you are free to control it, but I think this at least makes it for a nice simple example on if you wanted to go and get that kind of look on a card and animate it in, here's what you need to do with the storyboard. If anybody's interested in seeing a XAML equivalent of this, I'm happy to spin one that way too. Might do it as a second element so that we can see the two comparisons side by side, but this is effectively what needs to happen. So adding animations for card slide, what did I call this? Animation. Okay, with that, I think it is approaching bedtime for me. So thank you guys for jumping in. Like I said, I'm going to get that other theming PR merged. I'll get the DevOps pipeline fixed here in the next day or two and get that merged in. And then I know that there is a swath of pull requests that need to get reviewed and merged in. So we will hopefully get some of those merged in before next week, but I am planning on doing this next week at the same time. So thank you guys for coming in, and have a good week. We will see you next time.